I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. Bill, the president has been on the stump all over the country. No, not that president. I'm talking about President Barack Obama, who for some reason, even though we have a constitution that says we should have no titles, gets to keep his title even though he's out of the job. But that's another story. Bill, it's surprising to some people, and I want to read you from a story here that I'm seeing in the New York Times. Some admirers of President Obama believe that he's being too restrained. However, Mr. Obama, on the stump campaigning for other Democrat candidates, has, in the New York Times terms, excoriated the incumbent, meaning President Trump, for lying, fear-mongering, and pulling a political stunt by sending troops to the border. Now, Bill, maybe I'm an old man, but there was a time when once you stopped being president of the United States, there was sort of an unspoken pact, often referred to, that you would not badmouth the sitting president of the United States. Does this stun you like it does most Americans that Barack Obama is doing this?
No, it doesn't stun me at all. It's yet another first of the historic Barack Obama presidency. This not only doesn't surprise me, I would have been amazed, I would have been shocked if he had the class to just, be quiet and be a regular citizen, which is such an important part of our American tradition here. These people have turned politics into 24/7 battle, Scott. It's Rust never sleeps, and there's so much tension because the election. I can feel it. My voice is just getting constricted, but it's unseemly and it's undignified, and that doesn't seem to bother him. And it doesn't seem to bother the people that are watching him. And so the entire idea of retiring from politics, I guess, predicates itself on the idea that there is such a thing as a retirement from politics. But for the progressives, I don't think that is something they can process.
Now, it's not that other presidents don't go around and hit the stump campaigning for Republican candidates. It just seems like they've kind of observed this decorum that basically says, not only will I not mention him by name, and by the way, President Obama is not mentioning President Trump by name, but it's pretty darn clear who he's talking about, but they also won't criticize him openly. Eric Schultz, who is a senior advisor to the former president, says it this way, and this is a quote from the New York Times: President Obama wants to make room for the next generation of Democratic leaders to step up, which is why he largely stayed out of the day-to-day fray over the past 2 years, but too much is at stake in these midterms, and this moment is too consequential to sit out. Now, I think that seems to be a more reasonable explanation. I mean, frankly, Bill, things are different than they ever have been before with President Trump in office. Isn't it about time a former president with his gravitas steps up and speaks?
I don't know how you do it, Scotty. I don't know how you get those sentences out without your face catching fire. It is time to realize that politics has just become a blood sport, and whether or not it can recover from that, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it can't recover from that, given the opponents that we find ourselves arrayed against. You're often making the case for being fair, and I'm often trying to be fair. I really am. And if I thought there was equal blame to go around about this, I'd be blaming everybody equally. But it is a signature of the progressive movement to politicize everything and to fight dirty, as they did with Kavanaugh when they have to, and to break whatever rules they need to, like Harry Reid did with the so-called nuclear option, now the Reid option. And all of these gentlemanly handshake pacts are predicated on good manners and character. And Barack Obama doesn't have those things. So down they go. Now the question is, do they come back? I don't know. I'd like them to come back. I really would. But I suspect that they won't.
I thought it was interesting insight. Sometimes if you read far enough down in the New York Times or the Washington Post, you find things that it's almost as if the writer wrote them and the editor didn't have time to edit all the way through the story.
There's some truth, tiny little nuggets of truth buried way, way down deep.
So here it is. Mr. Obama has never been effective at translating his own popularity to other Democrats. The party lost all 3 elections while he was president when his name was not on the ballot, meaning midterm elections. But He seems liberated as he finally unloads on Mr. Trump. What do you think has set Mr. Obama, or former President Obama, free in a way that he couldn't previously? Do you think he finally just got sick of losing and thinks maybe if he changes his tactics, they could win?
There's a couple things to say about that. Again, the worst of it is just the baseness of it. But these are the days, and most of that baseness is a result of this progressive politicization of everything, as I said. But what when you say that Barack Obama was not, when the article says rather that Barack Obama was not able to translate his personal popularity into other Democratic candidates, I think this is going to sound a little strange, Scott, but I don't think he has any personal popularity. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying he's not popular with people. I'm not that stupid. I'm close. But what I mean by that is that everything about Barack Obama is symbolic. And everything that people love about Barack Obama is symbolic. And the perfect example of this comes from Barack Obama's own early career, life really, when he was hired to be the president of the Harvard Law Review, and he didn't write any law reviews. And this kind of thing is why his legacy is disappearing so fast.
Candidate in Florida, Andrew Gillum, who's running against Ron DeSantis down there, actually introduced President Obama when he was stumping for him and referred to him as our forever president.
I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I would like to think of Ronald Reagan as our forever president, and that particularly doesn't bother me. If he referred to himself as our forever president, you know what, Scott? That wouldn't bother me either, because that would just be another narcissistic comment from the pathological narcissist in chief, who will not go away, because if he disappears from the spotlight, he just vanishes from the earth. He vanishes from his own mind. Look, I'm not a psychologist, but I believe this is true. And by the way, just so in case there's one or two liberals watching this, I believe Donald Trump is essentially constructed the same way. I just think he has a lot more respect for American institutions than Barack Obama does. But on some level, I think that if the spotlight is not on Barack Obama, and he's not receiving the adoring praise of the multitudes, then he thinks on some level that he's not really here. I really believe this. I've seen it before, and I genuinely believe it. So it's not even a question of decorum for this guy. I suspect it's psychological survival. He's going to be, I suspect, if I had to guess, he's going to be the perpetual horsefly on the donkey's behind, let's say, who keeps biting over the course of the next 30 or 40 years, and every time he opens his mouth, it stings a little bit less. But even Jimmy Carter, who I thought was a miserable president, had the good grace to be quiet and go home, just like everybody else before him, as far as I'm aware of. And certainly, it's impossible to imagine Barack Obama performing the same kind of grace note that George Bush performed for Obama, when Bush basically wrote a letter and addressed it to, from 44 to 45, left it on the Resolute desk, and essentially said, listen, it's going to be tough, trust your instincts, call for. It was a very kind, personal, supportive, private message. And the idea of Barack Obama leaving one of those for Donald Trump is inconceivable, because these kind of things require dignity and class and the confidence in yourself. And I don't think he's ever had these things, ever.
Now, since you raised the question, I was going to ask something like this anyway, but, however many years, what is this now, 6 years from now, when President Trump finally rides off into the sunset, don't you think he's going to be on the Howard Stern show bad-mouthing President Spartacus?
Well, first of all, it's not going to be President Spartacus, so let's just put that out of our minds before that takes root and causes nightmares for the entire rest of the decade. I suspect that Donald Trump, as I said earlier, I'm trying to be fair here, I suspect Donald Trump will have a lot of the same impulses that Barack Obama does, and I think he's certainly a narcissist of that level. like I said, the question will come down to, does he have enough respect for American institutions to essentially stifle himself, Edith? And I suspect he might. If I had to bet, Scotty, I would say that he will be that Donald Trump will be considerably more vocal than the other 44. But I don't think anything's going to touch 45 in terms of his need for attention and his relentless desire to bring this progressive destruction to this country that he launched so effectively in his 8 years, and which is being erased at record speed.
We will, as we're recording this, the night before the final election day of 2018 midterms, this moment is kind of leaves us, you and I, in a quandary because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know how things are going to play out. What do you think happens to Barack Obama if the Republicans hold the House, maybe bump their margin in the Senate up a little bit, and clearly deliver a resounding defeat to him and his efforts to get Democrats elected? Do you think he rides off into the sunset then?
Never. He's never going to ride off into the sunset, and neither is Hillary Clinton. They may be pushed off the stage eventually, but in terms of them voluntarily taking a graceful bow and then saying farewell with a certain amount of class, it's never going to happen. If the Republicans hold the House, and this is airing as the election is going on, so we'll be doing a live segment tonight on election night on Tuesday night for 3 hours. But if the Republicans can hold the House, it's a repudiation of Barack Obama and further repudiation. We've done many shows on how he's destroyed the Democratic Party. Was it 1,000 seats that were lost by Democrats in the 8 years he was president?
It was a lot.
All around the country. Yeah, on federal and state levels and so on. So it will show the futility of him. And I suspect that if we're able to do that, it will show me and you and most people who have the ability to see facts in front of our eyes, that the American people have had enough of this character assassination, political correctness, Antifa, violence, celebrities. Well, can't really call Kathy Griffin a celebrity, but celebrityites, or celebrity-isms. All of this holding up the severed head of the president. I hope that if the Republicans can hold the House and keep the Senate, that will be a stinging rebuke to the progressive movement. In some ways, a more important one than the election of Donald Trump, because it'll indicate a settling. It'll indicate a settling of people's, I think, general disgust with this whole, what this country's become, where you can't speak your mind and so on. And if that happens, then I have no doubt at all, none, that the Democrats will draw absolutely no lessons from this whatsoever, and they will become more shrill. The street violence will increase. The victimology and the political correctness and the safe spaces will increase and increase and increase. And this is what I pray for humbly today and tonight and pretty much every night.
Well, drawing lessons from history and applying them to the current events. This is Bill Whittle Now, 5 days a week, and it's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. These are the folks who are actually paying on a monthly basis $9.95 so that they can have the privilege of making sure that this kind of commentary gets distributed across the country and around the world. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this show possible. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you, and see you on election night.